"Ma'am, that's the man from my dream." The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Golden Bean Café, casting warm patches of light across the worn wooden floors. Sarah wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her movements slow and methodical. The café was her sanctuary, a place she had built from nothing after her world fell apart 3 years ago. Her daughter, Emma, sat at a corner table near the window, her small legs swinging beneath the chair. The 4-year-old was coloring in her favorite book, the one with the butterflies and flowers. Sarah watched her daughter's concentrated expression, the way her tongue poked out slightly when she focused on staying inside the lines. These quiet moments were precious. Life had not been easy for Sarah. When Emma's father left before she was born, Sarah had to rebuild everything alone. She worked double shifts at a diner while pregnant, saved every penny, and eventually opened this small café. It was modest, but it was theirs. The walls held photographs of local artists, the menu featured homemade pastries, and regular customers knew them by name. Emma was Sarah's entire world. The little girl with golden curls and bright hazel eyes had never asked about her father. Sarah was grateful for that, though she knew questions would come eventually. For now, they had their routine, their little life, and that was enough. The bell above the door chimed softly. Sarah looked up from the espresso machine, ready with her usual warm greeting. But the words caught in her throat. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that seemed out of place in her humble café. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jawline sharp, and his presence commanded attention. It looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a neighborhood coffee shop. James Whitmore paused at the entrance, taking in his surroundings. He had driven past this café a dozen times but never stopped. Today, something had pulled him inside. Perhaps it was exhaustion from another sleepless night, or maybe it was the way the morning light made the place look almost magical. He approached the counter slowly, his leather shoes quiet against the floor. The woman behind the counter was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and flour dusting her apron. She seemed frozen, staring at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Good morning," James said, his voice low and measured. "I'll have a black coffee, please." Large. Sarah blinked, snapping back to reality. "Of course. Right away." Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. There was something familiar about this man, something that tugged at the edges of her memory, but she could not place it. She had never met him before. She was certain of that. James took his coffee and moved toward an empty table near the window. He needed to think, to breathe, to escape the pressure of his life for just a moment. At 32, he had built a business empire that most people only dreamed of. Whitmore Industries was worth hundreds of millions. But success had come at a price. He had no family, no real friends, no one who saw him as anything more than a bank account or a business opportunity. He sat down, pulling out his phone out of habit, then putting it away. He did not want to check emails. He did not want to think about the merger or the board meeting. He just wanted to exist for a moment. Then he heard it. A small voice, clear as a bell. "Mommy, that's the man from my dream." James looked up sharply. A little girl with golden curls stood beside his table, pointing directly at him with her small finger. Her hazel eyes were wide with wonder and certainty. Sarah rushed over, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Emma, sweetheart, you cannot just walk up to people." "I'm so sorry, sir." But Emma did not move. She continued staring at James with that unwavering gaze that only children possess. "It's him, Mommy. The man who brings the stars." James felt something shift inside his chest. He set down his coffee slowly, his full attention on the child. "The man who brings the stars," he repeated softly. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "In my dreams. You come to our house and you bring stars in a big box. And you read me stories. And you make Mommy laugh." Sarah's face had gone pale. She gently took Emma's hand. "Baby, this man is a stranger. You've never met him before." But I have, Emma insisted, her voice filled with innocent conviction. Every night. It's always there. James found himself unable to look away from the child. Something about her felt familiar in a way he could not explain. It was not logical. It was not rational. But it was undeniably there. How long has she been having these dreams? James asked quietly, looking up at Sarah. Sarah hesitated, clearly torn between protecting her daughter and acknowledging the strangeness of the situation. About 6 months. She talks about you, well, about someone like you. A tall man in a dark suit who visits us. He always thought it was just her imagination. James felt his heart beating faster. 6 months ago, something had changed in him. He had started feeling incomplete, as if something essential was missing from his life. He had started having his own dreams, big and distant, of a child's laughter and a woman's smile in a place filled with warmth. May I sit with you for a moment? James asked, gesturing to the chair across from Emma. Sarah looked uncertain, but something in his expression made her nod. They sat down together, the three of them around the small wooden table. What else happens in your dreams? James asked Emma gently. Emma thought for a moment, her small face serious. We have breakfast together. You always make funny shapes with the pancakes. And sometimes we go to the park. And you hold Mommy's hand. Sarah's breath caught. She had not told Emma that she was lonely, that she sometimes wished for someone to share their life with. How could her daughter know? James reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he retrieved a small photograph, one he had carried for years without knowing why. It was a picture of him as a child, standing with his grandmother in front of a house. But in the background, barely visible, was the same cafe. This cafe. The Golden Bean, decades before Sarah owned it. My grandmother owned this building, James said slowly, his voice thick with emotion. I spent my childhood here. When she passed, I kept the property but never came back. It was too painful. Sarah stared at the photograph, then at the walls around them. I bought this place 3 years ago from an estate sale. The previous owner had passed away. They sat in silence, the weight of impossible coincidence settling around them. Emma continued coloring, humming softly, as if she had already known this moment would come. I don't believe in fate, James said quietly. I've built my life on logic and strategy. But I can't explain this. Sarah met his eyes, and for the first time in years, she felt something other than caution. Neither can I. Emma looked up from her coloring book, smiling the brightest smile Sarah had ever seen. See, Mommy? He told you he was real. James found himself smiling too, a genuine expression that felt foreign after years of calculated business faces. Maybe some dreams are just memories that haven't happened yet. As the morning sun continued to pour through the windows, the three of them sat together, strangers bound by something beyond explanation. Sarah did not know what the future held. James did not have answers to any of the questions racing through his mind. But Emma knew. In the way that children sometimes do, she understood that some people are meant to find each other, even if it takes dreams and destiny and a little cafe filled with morning light to bring them together. The stars, it seemed, had finally arrived.